All right, today I'm joined by Isaac. I'm doing an interview series on junior developers, people who transition from whatever job they did in the past to being a developer. And Isaac, that's all you, right?
Yes, it is. Like you said, my name is Isaac Freshman. I am a former opera singer turned full stack engineer. Um, yeah, I definitely transitioned out of one career path and into a completely other one.
You're an opera singer, dude. Like that, like that has nothing to do with technology.
Oh, I'm very aware. I did that for, what, 10 years and then completely transitioned. So,
I mean, which is awesome. That's a pretty hard feat to do to go from something completely non-technical. Um,
yeah.
so like, what made you want to transition? Like, what made you like? Because you said you were an opera singer for like 10 years, right? Like that's a
Yeah.
long time.
Yeah. So basically, it was a former life, and it's a very long story, which we won't get into right now because we don't
Okay.
have enough time for that. But the long and short of it is the amount of time that I spent, what it felt like clawing my way to the top,
Okay.
um, and the excess travel, and again, I could go on and on about all of the negative things about one career path, but every career path has something negative about it, right?
Sure.
The But the biggest thing for me was I was looking for a life that I didn't seem that I could achieve,
Okay.
and then the pandemic happened, and it was kind of like the catalyst for everything. I was already there, I was already ready, and I had been back and forth about it a lot.
Well, you
And
had
then
gotten like,
that finally just pushed me over the edge, and I was like, now it's time. We're done.
well, because like in the pandemic, right? All the performances places were like closed, right? Like they hit the
Yeah.
off button.
So I was I lost about 3.5 years worth of work. I was scheduled out till January of next year
Oh
in
wow.
2020. So I was like 3.5 years worth of work was just gone overnight because they were like, we don't know how long this will last. And my manager was like, don't worry about it. We'll be fine. Uh, and it was fine until it wasn't. And then
Right.
obviously I obviously had to kind of reevaluate where I was in life and what I wanted and how I wanted to achieve it. And after numerous deep conversations and some soul searching, I realized that this wasn't it for me anymore. And I had already seen a lot of my friends go through similar struggles years prior to the pandemic,
Okay.
and they all kind of had similar struggles with the career path, with the business as it were, and they all kind of transitioned out of it anyway. And I was kind of one of those like last person standing, and I just felt like I need something new. I need something achievable, and I need something that brings me the joy that I'm looking for.
Okay. Yeah, that's real rough, dude. Like it's real rough to do something for that long, and like I'm sure you enjoyed it too.
Oh yeah, I wouldn't have kept doing it if I didn't. But I also didn't know anything else, right? Like even in my younger days in college, there were times that I was like switching my major around, and I thought,
Been there.
I don't know if music is really it for me. Like I maybe I'll go into something else. And then I would try it for like a semester, and I was like, no, this is terrible. Music is what I want. Um, and then I went and did a master's, and
Okay.
then I started performing a lot, and it was kind of like, well, now we're in it, I guess, for the long haul. And it's not like I was small fry. Like I was doing big things. Um, I did my main stage debut at Lincoln Center. Like
Woo!
I did main stage at Spoleto Festival. I was performing at San Francisco. Like they weren't small gigs. And then I just didn't feel like starting over, because that was what it felt like. Is like the pandemic made it feel like when we got back to real life that things would just start over, and I didn't want to do that. I didn't want to start from the bottom again.
Fair.
So I was like, well, if I'm going to start from the bottom, I might as well start a new career.
You know what, man? That
So
makes a lot of sense. I never heard it.
yeah,
You put it really succinctly, though. Like you're saying it's like it's all you knew, right? Like that's what you knew to do for so many years.
yeah,
And I know exactly what you're talking about because like teaching,
exactly.
that's all I did. Like what else would I do?
Correct, correct. And it's not like uh, it's definitely not something that's easy, and it's not something for the faint-hearted, especially because you have to step outside your comfort zone, and you have to like it's kind of like being thrown into the deep end of a pool, right? Like
Yeah,
it's a
exactly.
it's a sink or swim type of thing. Like you're gonna have to figure this out. Here's life, and we did. Like obviously you and I did, and I can't say that for everybody, but we made something out of nothing. So I think it's a win.
Yeah, no, that's 1,000% a win, dude. That's 1,000% a win. But you like,
Yeah,
I like the way you put it though. Like you said, like you essentially just have to jump in and do it. Like
yeah,
it's not gonna get any
and
easier.
yeah, and it's not like the boot camp made that any easier to sink or swim when you're just literally thrown in from 0 to 60, and you're just like, well,
Here we
hope you can
go.
develop. Here you go. Here's everything you've never learned before. Yeah. So
Well, full disclosure for the audience, I actually was the TA in Isaac's boot camp. So this was and it was feels like eons ago. Like the pandemic feels like
it was. It was. It was an entire lifetime ago.
right, like that's what it feels like. But I was like the class was like 57 people. I was one of three TAs, and we had we had an instructor, but the instructor left. We had a new instructor. So
That's right. I forgot about that. I forgot that was like 2 months into class that he was like, "Hey, I got pulled in. Bye," and we just like got a new teacher.
right, that's
Uh,
pretty cool. Now we're doing this. Well, I did want to ask you about your like how was your boot camp experience? Because a lot of people are doing these boot camps, and a lot of people are on the fence, right? They're on the fence of should I invest my time and money in a boot camp versus studying by myself. Like for example, me, I didn't do a boot camp. I just
right.
studied by myself. Now it's a little bit different because when I was 10, I got started with programming. Now I really should have stuck with it. I really wish I had done it.
Yeah.
But
Hi.
yeah, but like
Preaching to the choir, John.
but like I had like, at 16 I was doing like multiplayer online games. And then like so I knew what object oriented programming was. I never did anything professional, so like I still needed to learn all the basics and things like that, but I didn't do a boot camp. So there's
Right.
people who are like kind of like, should I not? It is a time investment, definitely is a money investment. Like looking back on it, how do you feel?
My experience was it was a very overwhelming time because it was a lot. And again, as I said before, unlike you, I did not do any sort of coding previous to my jumping in.
Right.
So it was a lot. It was a very what am I doing? Why am I here? A lot of imposter syndrome, which I mean that doesn't change.
Yeah.
I mean I've texted you about it. I've been like, what am I doing? Why am I doing this? What's the point?
Where am I? Like,
Um, but as far as like my boot camp experience, I think what I should have done previous to starting the boot camp is I should have done the same Udemy courses that I was taking simultaneously in the boot camp
sure.
previous, so I would have a clearer idea and a clearer path to my end goal.
Okay.
Because what I didn't realize was what I do and do not like in coding, right? So when
Ah,
I
I see what you're saying.
there was a course that I took on Udemy, and I'm not paid by Udemy, obviously. Otherwise I wouldn't be in this tiny office. But there's a couple of courses that really helped, and I obviously can like link them in if you post this on YouTube. Like obviously, we can post those links in like
Sure.
the description or whatever. But there was a full stack course that I took that really helped fill in the gaps that I wasn't getting in the boot camp. Because
Yeah.
obviously, with the boot camp, also there's only so much time in a day, and there's so much time in the 2 3 hour course. That meets 3 days a week.
Having been there with you, like I felt bad sometimes. I
Oh
literally
yeah, no, I could tell. I
like
could tell, but it's fine.
I mean, it was just like because it was like fire hose. I was just like, how on earth is anyone going to understand
Yeah,
like progressive web apps in a single afternoon? Like that, like
they're not.
who does that, right?
No one, and that was one of the biggest lessons I learned after it. Once I got a job,
Right.
was that the real world the real software development world is nothing like it was in the boot camp.
How so? Let's get into that a little bit. So, like, you're
Well, we've got time. Let's chat. Let's chat. We'll come back to that. I want to finish talking about the boot camp because that's very important.
all right. Let's
Because
do.
I didn't answer your question. I didn't answer your question.
Okay.
I would say if you already have a bachelor's, I would say it would make more sense to do an actual master's program in computer science than do a boot camp. And I only say that because I found a few universities that I've already known about and like have taken classes at that are the same price as the boot camp for a master's versus just a certificate.
That makes complete logical sense.
So for me, that would have made more sense because then I would have, because what people don't tell you in the university setting is that you can have a bachelor's and then do a master's in something completely different. No one cares. People start fresh and learn something completely new as their master's program. So
Yeah.
what I could have done is had that like base knowledge from the master's from the get-go rather than just being like, and here's software development. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because that was one of the biggest, that transitions us into the other conversation, which is why I wanted to come back. Because one of the biggest struggles I had going into actual software development was understanding the how and the why. And that's always, for me, the biggest piece of my learning that I'm missing, which is why I always have to like fill in those gaps. I have to buy books. I have to keep watching YouTube videos. I have to fill in and understand other things so I can then understand the topic at hand.
All right. So it sounds like you have to do a lot of extra work that outside the boot camp to try to get a full picture. Is what I'm hearing.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And that to me felt a little unfair because for the amount of money I was paying for that, it felt like I wasn't getting enough information. And it was kind of a cheap version of school. But
Okay.
obviously it wasn't because I'm obviously paying,
The same
I'm still
amount.
paying for it. Right. Yeah, like I'm still paying for it. The good news is like once I got out, I first started on a team where they understood that going into this and allowed me the time and space to learn while I was on the job,
Very
which
nice.
gave me the knowledge that I needed to do the job. And even within 6 months of that was more knowledge than I learned in the boot camp. But it was also, as a side note, it was also much more focused, like a master's program is, in whatever topic you're talking about.
I see what you're saying.
It was in that job I was only working in like JavaScript and React and Google, and I was doing Google Cloud, like the Firebase suite.
Right.
So those were the only three technologies I was really touching. Therefore, I got good at those things. Whereas when you do like a full stack boot camp, they're like, here's 23 languages, and you're going to get 3 weeks on each. Go. And it doesn't really,
Or
you don't
yeah.
stay on topic long enough to actually absorb the information. I wanted to. I mean, hell, I've always been a learner, and I always will be. I like to learn. Nerd. There's nothing wrong with that. I wish more people had the drive to like constantly, like never enough. I
Yeah.
need more information. But that gave me my drive to be better as a developer. But in doing so, it's also a downfall, right? Because of that, I spent way too much of my free time also learning because I was like stressed and creating these like scenarios in my head that I was like, oh, I'm going to get fired if I don't know this knowledge, or I'm going to get
Oh,
fired if I don't do better, which wasn't the case.
no,
Was
not.
it? It's not the case. It wasn't the case, but in my head it was.
Let's touch on this a little bit more because I
This
find.
isn't therapy, John. This isn't therapy. We don't have time.
Well, this is such a big. Like, this is such a
Tell me how you feel about that.
like, here's my couch. Let's relax. Like,
Yeah, yeah.
so, but here you go. Like, here's the thing. A lot of people are like like they're trying to break into like junior dev. One thing I always say to my students is like the real learning happens after I'm done. right? Like
Mm-hmm.
my job is just to, like, so like I'm on my sixth boot camp right now. And I to get the same speech at the beginning. I've kind of refined it since I work with you. Is that my job is to
Mm.
get them to talk to you? Okay,
Mm-hmm.
that's actually my job. Like,
Mm-hmm.
I can't necessarily make you a good engineer in the 6 months I have with you, given all that throw in your brain. That's not going to happen. My
Mm-hmm.
job is to get them to talk to you and to
Yep.
possibly hire you. And then in the
Mm-hmm.
year after, that's when you're going to learn 20 times more than anything I could teach you in 6 months without the real context. And
Yeah, absolutely.
I tell people that, and they give me this look like, "What do you mean?" And it's
Yeah.
well, like but you know me, I speak my mind. So like even when
Yeah.
we were like in the like when I was teaching you, I was just sort of like, well, you can't necessarily learn everything, and you can't necessarily know stuff. But there's always that little bit of fear, like if I don't know something or I didn't learn something properly, it's gonna bite me in the butt later.
Well, yeah, because that's how society and university teach you.
Right, and
They feed you that insecurity that makes you feel like if I don't know this or I don't do this right, it's going to bite me in the butt later. Which is again not the case because half the time people are just figuring it out as they go anyway.
let's talk about your junior dev experience. So first off, I kind of would like to focus on like how did you get in the job? Like, you know what I'm saying? Like a lot of people they get out of the boot camp and they get their
Uh-huh,
certificate and
uh-huh,
some people they get their job like within like 2 weeks, 3 weeks, a month, right? I've seen it. And there's some people
uh-huh.
who flounder for like 2 to 3 months, upwards of six
Yeah.
months. I feel
Yep.
so bad because they spend
Yep.
so much time and money. And
Uh-huh.
so I'd like to think it's not a lottery, but how did you get into your first position, like with your certificate in hand?
Well, let me first say, as someone who spent many years in the music business, there's a lot of rejection. And when you deal with that much rejection that consistently, it prepared me for what I ended up dealing with post boot camp,
Okay.
which was I have to cast my net as wide as humanly possible and apply for as many jobs as I can find that I feel like I can am qualified for.
Sure.
Um, and I think it took me 6 weeks after the boot camp, which obviously is I'm still very lucky for that because they didn't have to hire me. I just fate was on my side and luck played a lot of a part in it. Like you said, it's a lottery, and I hate to say it. If you're not super well connected and you don't have someone who's going to give you a chance, you have to wait on luck, which sucks because even if you do your best, even if you were the best student in that boot camp, even if you're the best student at school, period, if you are not connected, it's all about luck. It's
Yeah.
all about luck. You can apply for 300 jobs and get zero. I think I applied for 186 jobs
Oh
before
my
I got it.
God. I did not.
Before I got an offer, or before I got an interview and then subsequently an offer. Um, I was applying a lot. You know, you can reach out on LinkedIn, you can reach out to the recruiter, you can talk to whomever. I think of the 186, I got 3 interviews. Two after the first interview were like, "You're too inexperienced. We don't think you'd be a good fit."
Okay.
And one of them didn't care. The job that I ended up getting didn't care how inexperienced I was because they were very much of the same mindset as I am, which is soft skills such as empathy, communication, things of that nature are not things easily taught. Coding can be taught. Hard skills can be taught.
Yeah.
And because of that, they were like, we see your potential. We see the work that you've done. We see your resume. We see you've, had other jobs. We see, this, that, the other thing. We like your personality. You fit well with the team. We will teach you the skills as you need. We understand that you're a junior developer. It's fine.
That's see, you touched on so many good things in that, right? Like culture fit, expectations. So I always tell, when you come to interviews, like they have to have the correct expectations of you, right? Because really, a lot of companies they put junior developer down on the job description. What they
And
really
it's not a
want,
junior developer. They want a mid-level that
they
actually is
want
just going to get
me.
paid like, yeah, they want you, but paid like a junior. Yeah, I know.
Exactly.
But
That's exactly what they
that's
want.
capitalism. That's capitalism. We know that.
They're not going to get it
No,
though. I'm
no,
not doing that. So,
no. That's the same BS that they throw when you have a master's degree and they try to hire you at minimum wage.
right.
It's like, no, no, I have a master's degree. No, we're not doing this. We're not jumping through that hoop.
I mean, but it's good when people put their foot down. I always tell people to put their foot down in a lot of these circumstances because if you don't give in, they don't get the person in that position. How did that look for you? Because a lot of people, one of the things I noticed, and I talk more about it in boot camps now, with the mentality is that people come from service positions or positions where they don't have power in the relationship, right? Like they can't take things off, they can't go on vacation, no sick days because they don't like it. Then they can step, but then they don't have money, right? So there's a clear power imbalance. So that power imbalance has lasted for so many years that when they get a job where that's not the case, they still think in the old paradigm. So did you
Yeah,
learn
I
how
mean
to?
yeah, of course. I mean that was my mentality up until like a year ago because it was that was a mentality I had built in as a musician because it's very much like the service industry where you are easily replaceable and everyone's jumping at a chance to get in and they know they can get away with,
Whatever.
a
Yeah.
lot of they can get away with murder because they know that they can just replace you and you have to do what they say, which is why I worked 11 and a half months out of the 12 every year. And I was traveling on the road living out of my suitcase. That's it. You didn't have a choice. You don't have power in that relationship. And that's kind of what happened was as I got older, I started seeing my value and my worth, not as a musician, but just as a person. And obviously, thanks therapy. Um, Big shout out to my therapist. Um, but also, like, those things are very important as you get older. And once you figure it all out, then you don't kind of put up with that anymore. You don't want to. You don't want to. Sometimes you have to.
Right.
I mean, hell, I did for so many. I spent 2/3 of my life doing that. No, no more. Um, and even still, like I remember, I don't even think I've told you this. So, like when we first started coding, I was so in that mentality that I had a really hard time telling the computer what to do because I felt bad.
Really.
Yeah, like I felt bad for just giving direct orders to a computer in coding. It's like do this, then this, then this, and I felt bad about it because of my mental state. Because I was like, well, I don't want to tell someone else or something else what to do because I know what that's like to be treated like that.
Oh
I don't
wow.
want to do that. So it was like a really hard time for me to like be okay with that and be like, well, first off, this is coding. It has nothing to do with human empathy and stuff. But having that power and taking it back was really invigorating.
That is so. Let's talk about your first position, right? Because you said up to about a year ago, right? So how did I mean? Because you basically said that like the boot camp and your first position were like miles away from each other in terms of experience, like what you ended up doing, and
Yeah.
right? So and I kind of do warn my students like it's not what you think it is. It's still a job, right? Like we have the YouTube videos with like the mahogany and the bar and the beanbag cushions and
Yeah.
everyone having lunch, whatever. Like it's still a job. It's just
Mm-hmm.
you're doing a skilled job. Like you're doing a job that few people can do. So there are more perks, but it's still at the end of the day a business.
Correct. Um, it also, I also had to get over my ego because I have big dreams, big aspirations, as you know, and I always push myself probably too far, but that's for another time. I wanted to be, one of the FANG companies
Okay.
because I was like, I want to be there. Well, not Mang, but whatever. You know what I
Whatever.
mean? And obviously that didn't happen. But I found a smaller company that allowed me that freedom and that time to grow as a developer. They grew me, I grew. Um, it was a win-win for everybody, but it wasn't like school, right? It wasn't like the boot camp, because I found out that 90% of the time you're Googling or going to Stack Overflow for answers that people have already solved. Or you ask your
Exactly.
coworkers, you ask your friends that are developers, you get answers from them. Uh, it's very rarely that you have to just solve a problem solely on your own. And even if you do, it's still like a mishmash of other things that you've grabbed and read elsewhere and shoved together into a solution.
That's such
And
a
that was something that was really weird for me, because you get taught in the boot camp, like, you have to know how to do this, have to solve this problem. And then literally the first day, he was just my senior was like, just go to Stack Overflow and get the answer. It's probably already there. And I was like, I can just do that? And he was like, I don't care. Is it going to get the job done? Yeah, just go do it.
I mean, then you're done, right? Like
And then you're done. And then you spend the rest of the time learning how to do the thing that they already told you how to do. If you have the answer in front of you, you can then look at the answer, read through the answer, and see how it correlates to what the question was, and kind of like make the connection, and then gain a deeper understanding of the topic at hand, rather than floundering and just trying to struggle through problem solving when you're brand new to it.
that is such a good point because again, this goes back to the fact that they're a business. They're not school, right? They're not like you're not a student in a classroom. You're not getting a grade. The business needs to make money, and so from their perspective, like if
They just want it done.
yeah,
They don't care how it gets done. They just want it done.
so if you
That's
went
fine.
to Stack Overflow and you got the answer from there, and afterwards you figure out how to work, that's fine from their perspective.
Right. And then what the really good thing about that is that you may write something at the beginning, like for me when I first went on my first job, you may write something that is the most garbage code ever, and it works, and you're
Yep.
like fine, but then you'll come back. Like, I remember looking at an old project that we had to like revisit a year later, and I literally looked at the project and I was like, who the hell wrote this? This is terrible. And they were like, you did.
This is
You
not-
wrote it, Isaac. And I was like, oh wow, this is rough. So even in a year, my coding changed so much so that I didn't recognize my old writing. Because you learn how to be more efficient. You learn how to write cleaner code. You learn how to take what other people have given you. You learn new tricks. I mean, hell, the software development as a whole constantly is changing and evolving. And that's why you have to always be learning, because there's always something new to talk about. There's always something new to learn. I mean, React just created a new hook that like erases the need for the other hooks. And I'm like, what was the point of me learning all these hooks then? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, exactly.
That's why you have to always be on the up and up.
So it sounds like I only want to take a second to congratulate you, Isaac, because it sounds like you got to your first job. I know there were some ups and downs in it, but
Yeah.
you got there and you were there to learn. Okay.
Yes.
And so that's the same with me with my first job. My first job, it was rough, very, very rough.
Mhm.
I was given a lot of things I should not have been given to do as a
No.
developer, like at all.
No.
Like
Mhm.
3 months in, I was told to make an API when I didn't. I like remember I didn't have a boot camp. No,
Correct.
I didn't even know what API even stood for.
Exactly. You're like Google's API.
Right. And then I'm just like, I slap it together. Was it secure?
Mhm.
No. Did
Mhm.
it work? Kind of. Like it did
Sure.
some things as far as I could tell, but like you get in there and if you're of the mindset that you're there to learn, I feel that
Mhm.
that like propels you forward. If you're in the mindset of I'm going to survive at my job, it's a little bit different than I'm there to learn. Do you see what I'm saying?
Oh, absolutely. And after your first job, then on your second job, you actually learn how to do the thing.
Wait, are you telling me that did you switch jobs? That you
I
went from
did.
one to the other? You didn't stay with one job for the rest of your life?
Why would I do that? Why would
So
I ever do that again? I did that. I had two jobs in younger days where I stayed for way too long. One of my first jobs, I stayed for 10 years because my parents told me if you stay at a company for a long time, they value you more. It's not the case.
No.
They don't care. They don't care. But yeah, after 2 years, I left my first job, and now I just started a new job in January, um, where now I'm looked to for my knowledge base on React because that's solely what I did at my old job. And so now people that are my senior are asking
People
me,
do.
they're asking me for advice on how to write React apps. And I'm like, like, that's when the imposter syndrome really kicked in, because I was like, why are you asking me? I was like, you've been doing this for 20 years. Why are you asking me what the answer is? I don't know. And then I realized, oh yeah, that's why they hired me to do that, to do the thing.
That's amazing. That's absolutely amazing. But it kind of goes to show you that, like, so they could be around for 20 years, but that does not mean that they know. Like, you're talking about how fast the industry changes. That does not mean
Yeah.
they know React,
No.
right? At all. Like, they don't know React from a hole in the ground. They do need someone that has just been focusing on React. Doesn't matter that you've been focusing on it for only so many years, right? You still know more than they do.
Yeah. In some aspects, yeah. And then you learn their tricks and apply it to your knowledge base and tweak it to be of today's technologies. If it's someone who hasn't learned anymore, obviously, if you're in software, you know that you're going to have to evolve with it, or you're going to be left behind. Um, but there are tricks that I didn't know that you could do, and though mostly because one of my bosses, like, literally wrote the book on SQL.
Oh wow.
So there's a lot of tricks that I didn't know you could do. And so I'm like, wait, that's something you can do with that? And he's like, yeah, didn't you know that? I'm like, no, when would I have learned that? They didn't teach me that in school. They didn't teach that at all. And that's the kind of, like, mentorship that you need to find in a boss, or in a leader, I should say, not a boss. And you have to find a team that knows where you are in your life, sees your potential, helps you grow to that potential, and in theory should push you out the door when you've reached your potential, because they don't want to hold on to you anymore, because they know you're on the upswing. In
That's
theory,
poetic.
in theory, that's
Sure,
what they should be doing.
it doesn't
But
always necessarily come out that way.
no,
But
of course not.
so let's talk about your life right now. So right, so now you've got some experience. So like the thing I always tell
Mm-hmm.
my boot camp students is stick with your job for the year, like at least a year
Mm-hmm.
or a
Yep.
year or two. And I always find that the people who heed my advice, when they eventually like get it through their head that they're not going to stay at their first job forever, and they start
Mm-hmm.
shopping around. Did you find it easier to find a job after you already had experience?
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. It
It's
was.
night and day,
It's
right?
Yeah. I didn't. I don't want to say it was, again, easy by any means, but it was definitely a hell of a lot easier than my first job search. Also, what's funny is, like, after I started, posting on LinkedIn, or that I was open to work, it was like the
Oh,
jobs were just, like, flooding my inbox.
oh, geez.
And
I'm very careful with the open to work thing on LinkedIn because it opens the floodgates. They're
yeah,
on
it
like
did.
right on
It
right.
did. It did. Half of them were garbage, but there were a bunch that were really cool. And they were asking me, they were like, you seem really qualified. Would you like to apply? And I was like, yeah, sure, why not? And I probably did 15, 20 different interviews in, like, a month, for new places. And it just so happened that this job that I am currently at was, a family friend that we had stayed with, when we were visiting Minneapolis.
Okay.
And my fiance's parents went to college with the people who own this company.
This is quite the web.
Oh, it was. And the thing is that I didn't know this. I didn't know what they did. We didn't talk about it. I literally zero information. Hell, she didn't know about it. And we were at dinner, and we get to the, like, let's talk about you. What do you do for work? The usual small talk.
Sure.
And I was like, I'm a software developer. And they were like, oh, are you looking for work? And I was like, actually, I am. And I said, but then they were like, well, send us your resume. We'll see what we can do. And I thought nothing of it, because I've heard that so much in my lifetime. I was
Sure.
just like, oh, they're just being nice. They're not interested in actually hiring me. They're just like doing me the favor of like, we'll look at your resume, make you feel better. And then literally like, I got an email the next day when we got back, like, where's your resume? And
Like we're waiting on it. Like,
I was like, oh, sorry, I didn't know this was for real. And so I sent it. And then within 3 days, I had an interview. And then 2 days later, I had a second interview. And then they were like, let's have you meet with the owner of the company
oh
a week
wow.
later. And then within a month, I was hired. And they were like, when can you start? And I was like, oh my God. Okay. I guess immediately. Um,
Sure.
so it kind of all worked itself out. And obviously, that was a very weird web of connectivity that I didn't expect to have happen. But I'm happy it did. You know, it led me to the place where I wanted to be, and it gave me the life that I was looking for. But I agree with you that unless it's a very very toxic environment, you should stay at your job for a year and give it the real opportunity. Unless it's again really toxic and terrible.
I'll be honest with you. My first year was terrible. I literally got screamed out on the phone by a person. So, but I suck. But my mentality is different. I'm just sort of like, okay, great, go ahead and scream. I'll be here for a year and get my experience. Thanks.
I don't again spending that much time as a musician and always being screamed at. I was just like, I'm not dealing with this anymore. I'm too old
Fair.
for this. I'm not going to do this anymore. Um, so I'll happily leave if someone starts that. But luckily, that's not the case. I've been very, very fortunate that both jobs have been, for the most part, very healthy environments and helped me grow. So I'm fine. I very much agree with your stand on staying at a job for the year, giving you the experience. Because again, as soon as I hit that 2 year mark, suddenly I was
Yep.
qualified for 1,000 more jobs.
And they come to you, and that's the point I want to
They
kind of
come to they come to you, and they don't care if you have every single box checked on their list.
preach it.
They're like, we will be happy if you had 3 things of these 10. We don't care if you have all of them. No one has all 10 of these. We're just seeing like maybe we'll get somebody with a couple. Maybe we'll get someone with half. I mean, most of the time, if the HR person knows what they're doing when they post the job description, they'll post things that one person should have. Um, but obviously, no one can have like 10 years of experience in every coding language. It just doesn't
Right,
happen.
like, it just no, that's not a reasonable expectation, but this point is very, like, because a lot of fear a lot of junior developers have is, well,
Hmm.
the job description says I have to have, like, I also showed some pretty awful job descriptions where the
Mm-hmm.
person who wrote it clearly didn't know what they were like, "We need, like, experience in Blazor, React, and Angular," and it's sort of like, normally you pick one?
Yeah, normally
So
you have one focus and you stick to that. That's why there are people that have specific like .NET developer,
correct.
React developer, Angular developer. Like you specifically focus on one major piece. Yes, it has like sub languages that it uses,
Sure.
but it's not like you're expected to not know like this much stuff. You got to know this much stuff.
And it's just they have to be reasonable with what people actually can do, right? Like, no, again, to your point earlier, no one can know 10 languages, no one can know all 30 whatever JS frameworks there are right
You
now.
can try all you want, but that's stupid. Don't if a job is looking or asking for that, that's a red flag for me.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
unrealistic. So, I mean, how, like, let's discuss a little about your current work situation, like your current
Yeah.
life right now, just in general. Like,
Sure.
I find one of the biggest things that like, I was a teacher before, so people generally were professional with me, but I found that, like, compared to, like, service work, like, I worked at, like, fast food for a while, I worked in, like, service industry. The people in coding, like, when in my jobs are just the politeness level and the professionalism are just turned up to 100 as opposed to those previous positions I was in.
Yeah. It's well, I mean, it's different in every job, so I can't speak to everything. But my personal experience, because I work for a application consulting firm, we are hired to help them, to give them input, to build their applications, to
Right.
analyze their data. You know, whatever the case may be, we are hired in, we are brought in to help them. So they are polite to us because not only are they paying us for our time, but we're assisting them. So why would you be rude to the person you're helping? Oh wait, is this like the service industry? It is, but people actually treat you with respect. I don't know why.
I'll be honest, like straight talk. It took me a while to get used to it. Just sort of like for example, I had a job where my manager said good morning to everyone individually over at stand
Mm-hmm.
up every single time. She was
Mm-hmm.
always polite, but even if I know that she was stressed or like, maybe not having the world's best day, she never like let it out on anybody ever.
No, no.
You turn a page, right? So now your attitude, it sounds to me like your attitude is way different than it was years ago. I was gonna be honest with you. Like I
Oh,
remember
absolutely.
camp or just after the boot camp, like your attitude seems to be way more confident. You know what direction you want to go into. You understand like, your boundaries and your limits, like what you're okay with, what you're not okay with.
Mm-hmm.
And so where do you see yourself from here? Like what direction do you see yourself going in?
You know, it's a really good question because I ask myself that a lot because I don't know. I don't know where I'm going to end up. I just want to have a job that treats me well, that pays me my worth, and allows me the time to live my life the way I want to live it.
Preach it.
And I don't care where that is. Obviously, I would love to work for one of my dream companies. If that doesn't happen, it doesn't happen. That doesn't that doesn't change my value as a person. I don't find my work defines me as a human.
That is that is another big thing that was a change with me. Like where work didn't define me anymore.
Oh yeah, that was a hard thing to overcome. I'm happy here, and I'll work here until something else comes along that seems like a better fit. Obviously, I would love to be in a leadership role because I think I have a lot of good ideas, and I have a lot of uh, creativity that I have oozing out that I'd like to use. And I think I'm pretty good with people, and it allows me to create new relationships. And this job allows me to do it in the way that I'm comfortable. And so I don't know where I'll end up in 5, 10 years, but as long as I'm happy, that's all I care about.
That's beautiful, Isaac. That's just straight up beautiful.
Thank you. Thank you.
So clearly, I guess this transition overall, it sounds on all points, it seems like it's been positive.
Oh, yeah.
What would you say is like let's say let's say there's someone out there listening to this video right now. They have not made
Right.
a transition yet. Maybe they're working some service economy gig. And again, if you're listening to this, Isaac and I both know exactly what that's like. We've done the whole circuit. And they're sitting there thinking to themselves, like, okay, I listened to Jonathan Isaac talk. It sounds great, sounds wonderful. But like, what should I do to make sure I'm successful? Because I still feel a bit nervous, right? Because there's always going to be that little bit of like insecurity at the beginning.
Yeah. I would say, first off, hello, strangers. Welcome to our TED Talk. Um, I would say, first off, everyone's feeling that kind of um, that nervousness, that anxiety, right? So I would say make sure that you have a really good support group. I had a really good teacher who told me that I should build a board of advisors because you yourself are your company, right?
Oh wow, that's a good way of looking at it.
So you build your board of advisors and you surround yourself with people that will give you good advice, who will support and see your potential and help you achieve it and not put you down at any moment. They need to be able to have real talks with you, and you have to be be straight shooters because you need people who are honest. Um, but I would say that's the first thing. Once you have that in your life, if you don't, reach out to new people, make new connections, and build those relationships. I know it's not easy, um, but it's definitely very helpful to have. After you've done that, I would say to have success, to jump ship, is to believe in yourself because it's not going to be an easy journey. And you're going to be outside your comfort zone a lot. And you can learn the skills, like I can tell you, go learn, go do lead code for 2 months straight and learn how algorithms work and whatnot. And you can study every book on the planet, but at the end of the day, you need supportive people in your life. You need belief in yourself, and you need to know that it will all be okay, regardless of how things turn out. But then when you're done with all those things, and yeah, sure, go to Leak Code, learn your 2 months of algorithms, because that doesn't hurt either.
I mean, the more you know, right?
Yeah, I mean, the more you know. I didn't really understand that for a while, and I still don't fully. So it's a learning it's a learning process for everybody, even if you've been doing it.
But what it sounds like from what you said is the tips for success is a mental game, right? So it's all
Oh
about
yeah,
your mentality and making sure you have that system of support people because you can't go at it alone. If you try to go at it alone, your chance of success kind of nosedives. And
yeah,
then
yeah,
yeah, and then also being able to just tell yourself, get up in the morning, saying, I can do this. At the end of the
yeah.
day, I can be successful at this, and then let it run its course at that point. You know what I'm saying? Because 2 or 3 years later, I tell students all the time, boot camps, a lot of the frustration you experience now, you will not care about in 2 to 3 years. Like you'll remember
No,
it, and you'll
no.
but in 2 3 years you will not care. You will make no
I
difference to
mean,
you whatsoever.
I was very lucky to have and build relationships with people in the boot camp. Obviously, you and I became friends as well, so that helped as well. Yeah, the frustrations that I felt during that are, in the moment, it feels like a mountain, and right now, I'm just like, I can't think of a single thing that I cared about during that time. I can't. I can't remember any of it.
And then that day will come. Basically, you just have to remember that
It
that day.
it will come. It's not gonna, again, like I said, it's not an easy journey, but it's a journey, and nothing that's worth fighting for is easy.
I have to agree with that. All right, we're coming up on the 50-minute mark. I think this has been a good discussion. It touched on a lot of points. I think because my goal is really I want to help people transition. I want to help people find something better for themselves. Maybe it's coding isn't for everyone necessarily. I don't think.
But just because you go into software development doesn't mean you will be a developer. There are millions of other jobs that are varieties of this, and like project management, data analytics, cybersecurity, software developers, software engineers. Those are different. There's so many different variants. It doesn't mean that you are stuck doing this. Anything that you learn can be used elsewhere and be taught and like build upon your foundation. All it does is make you better.
That's why I tell like bootcamp students, like, maybe you don't like the front end or whatever else. I'm like, maybe in 3 years you're doing DevOps. Like maybe you're a DevOps engineer and you're on the cloud. And then like, who cares if you don't understand CSS all that much? Like it
I
doesn't
mean,
matter,
that's yeah. Hi, I can't remember the last time I touched a CSS file.
right? Like, does it matter? No. Like if that's not what you do, then
No, and if you don't remember, you Google it.
so that's it. But that's another really good point, though, is that the world of tech is more than just sitting down at a computer and typing out code, right? It's also like the people who do like project management, like who like needs
Mm-hmm.
to make sure the project gets out on time. It's the people who do the agile and scrum stuff. It's people who engineer things. It's the networking people, the security people. Like those are full-time jobs that pay well.
That pay very well. No one's gonna say nada about that job. Something that I will say, my last boss told me this, and I keep this in the back of my mind at all times. As a software developer, you code maybe 20% of the time. 80% of the time is planning. I mean, this behind me, this is just like entry points on an application skeleton that I'm drawing. That's not coding. This is just
Nope.
drawing. This is just planning, making it easier for me when I finally do sit down at a computer to type. Doesn't mean you're stuck at a computer.
Yeah, you're not stuck there. I mean, you're discussing it with other people. You're probably in meetings. They have their opinion. You have your opinion. You have limitations, things you'd like to
Correct.
get done, tech debt,
Correct.
all that good stuff. So
Ooh, baby, tech debt.
yeah, I mean that's a whole different
That's a
discussion.
whole other series.
Exactly. But
Correct.
like that is an excellent point. Is also just sort of like if you're listening to this and you're imagining what it's like to code, like I 1,000% agree with that. I only spend like 20 to 30% of my time actually fingers to keyboard writing code. Most of it is us discussing, like, because we don't want to make mistakes. We don't want to trap ourselves in the corner and make some bad design choice that we have to pay for 2 or 3 years from now in
Hmm.
our time.
Correct.
So that is a really big point.
Hmm.
All right. We're gonna like wrap up here. Is there anything last you want to talk about, or
Just feel free to reach out to me or John on LinkedIn or GitHub for that matter if you need to chat. But we're here to support those who are transitioning because it's difficult. Happy to give advice or just listen to a complaint session if you've got it. Um, give guidance as needed. And be sure to like and subscribe below.
you have to have that in every
I
YouTube
had,
video.
I had to do it. Just
You
make
had
sure that it's yeah, yeah. You're welcome.
perfect. All right, so yeah, reach out. I have contact information in the YouTube video. Okay, if you want to reach out, I really mean it. Like, you know what I'm saying, there's people out there who are struggling right now. Isaac and I have both done what you're trying to do. So,
Mhm.
we've gone ahead, we've got the guidance. So if you'd like to reach out to us on LinkedIn or like any of the contact information in the YouTube description, by all means, please reach out. Thank you so much, Isaac, for doing this video. This has been an awesome interview.
Yeah. Thank you, John. Thank you, John. Pleasure's all mine.